Sup everybody, so just another review. This one's going to be about the Joule Lacrosse blur shaft. Before anybody says anything about the whole, I believe it's STX or Nike blur, this will be changing from the blur to the Lev shaft. This is simply from their prototype phase in order to get the product out there so people could test it and so on and so forth. But it is Joule Lacrosse. It is spelled Joule, but pronounced Joule as in a jewel that you would wear. And it is a carbon fiber company. Uh, Talked to Jacob, one of the head guys over there, and he had a short discussion with me about the differences with carbon fiber producing companies and so on and so forth, about how a lot of them don't really know much in the way of carbon fiber, at least to where the benefits and the drawbacks of carbon fiber and how you're actually really supposed to use it. And he said that the people that he works with and the people that he interviewed to really get uh, a good grasp on the technology of carbon fiber uh, have military experience or have military knowledge of the technology that goes into carbon fiber uh, utilities and utensils and so on and so forth that people like myself, Army, Marines, Air Force would use. Whatever tools or equipment that we would end up using, that sort of knowledge is what goes into their shafts. And I can tell you, I can kind of feel what he's getting at and what he's talking about. And with the shaft, it's actually pretty apparent that they tried to do that. This particular shaft, the blur, or once you actually try and purchase it, is going to be the Lev shaft. It should be a LEV. And the difference between, say, this or any other carbon fiber shaft or even alloy shaft is that the shaft is in fact completely ovaled. There you go. It is an actual oval shape. So if you look at the end from the end of a octagonal shaft, it's a little bit longer from the sides than comparison to the front and back of the shaft. Now the thing is, they use whatever technology they do to kind of mold the carbon fiber shaft around an octagonal shape, and it's an octagonal core, I believe. Let's see if we can get you to see it. You can see it kind of on the end here, but it has an octagonal core shape going throughout the entire shaft, but the outside of it is oval, which seemed very strange at first. And once I put a head that I'm comfortable with on it, which was my Lakota U to test it out, it started to really fit my fingers and feel right, especially once I put some grip tape on it, because it's a fairly smooth shaft. Maybe a sand blasted texture, sandpaper texture should be added, but this is only one shaft out of many that they make, so one of them might actually have that. But once I put the grip tape on it the way that I wanted it to be on there, it definitely changed the feel of the stick a little bit to where I could use it, where it felt more familiar and comfortable. This is one of their prototype shafts, so this is not actually, from what I understand, a finished product of what the top end will look like that you would actually put the shaft on. It From about here up, it is actually octagonally shaped. You can see the edges are kind of shaved off and so on. That's just for prototype purposes to really test out the rest of the shaft, because I believe they're actually going to leave the octagonal shape at least at one end or maybe at both ends, like just the ends really, so that there is an actual shape that the butt ends and the head itself can fit on there snugly, so that you don't have to wrap it in tape for the oval shape to really fit in there properly. But until I get another shaft from them, I can't say otherwise. But It feels nice. It's got a nice strong feel to it. It doesn't really feel like most carbon fiber shafts that I've messed with in the past. It actually feels as if it's a little bit more solid. Um, I was hitting a tree with it just to test it out. Like that's what I do with it, pretty much any shaft that I feel that's supposed to be strong, is that I hit it against something that's usually stronger than anything that can be man-made. That's blunt anyway, which is usually a tree. And so that's what I tested it against. There's a small amount of flex to it, right around the top third of the shaft, so which is nice. It's a very small amount of flex. Maybe not as much as what STX and Epic have, but definitely enough to where you can kind of feel it, but you can't actively bend it or anything like that, cross your knee or anything like that. But it is a very solid shaft. I believe they make D poles in this material as well. Uh, the thickness of the walls are actually about as thick as a regular aluminum shaft, but it's carbon fiber, so however they actually make it, like they roll it, or however they actually make the carbon fiber material, actually seems to feel like it works. I haven't broken it. The decals don't really chip so far. I think it's probably going to end up kind of being like what happens with a uh, aluminum or any metal shaft, that it kind of dents a little bit and then it'll fade or something. But I've been messing with this for almost a month now, and I gotta say it's a pretty solid shaft. It's probably gonna be one of my backups unless they want it back. Uh, it's it's definitely solid. It feels nice in my fingers now, and I'm kind of used to it. And it's definitely an interesting and unique take on trying to move the technology of lacrosse forward. And I feel that they are making those steps and making it in a positive manner, because shafts have been octagonal for a long time, uh, ever since pretty much vintage ones. Vintage ones, most people would just leave them round, and not even till, from what I understand and reading and looking it up, shafts really weren't octagonal until within the last, I want to say 80 years, maybe 60 years, at least just from what I've read. I'm sure there's people that have done it on their own, or certain small companies would do it themselves, or even some of the tribes would do it themselves. But it's interesting to be going from an traditional octagonal shape to a rounded shape. Not just half the shaft or anything like that, but the entire shaft being a rounded shape in an oval. And so overall, I'd have to give the performance, the condition, and the weight is very light. It's maybe about the weight of a decent scandium shaft. And I'd have to give Joule Lacrosse's Lev shaft, which is what it's going to be called, uh, Joule Lacrosse's Lev shaft, I'm going to have to give I had written down a 9 out of 10 on my written review, just for my notes and whatnot, but I'm going to have to give it an 8.5, simply because it is a prototype. Until I actually have the final product in my hand, at least what's called the final product in my hand, I'm not going to give it a 9. But 8.5, because of the very, very top here, is not doesn't look like a presentable way of doing it. Otherwise, the shaft is top quality, top of the line in my opinion, and worth the money. Off the top of my head, I do not actually have the notes either of the price of this shaft, but it is supposed to be a very good bargain in comparison to most places. So be on the lookout for Joule Lacrosse 8.5, nice solid 8.5. And I'll catch you guys later for my next review on a couple other things that I have waiting for you guys. So like, comment, subscribe.